wins, penalty points, and a whole load of news. This week I'm chatting all about the Miami Grand Prix, so get ready because you've been summoned to the Steward's office. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Saira and this week we are chatting all about the Miami Grand Prix. And there is so much to talk about. There is so much news that's going on. There's stuff from last week because I didn't have an episode since I was away. There's stuff that came out over the race weekend. And you know what? This race weekend had so much going on. I think we all know what the headline news for the Miami Grand Prix was. That doesn't really require an introduction, but yes, of course, Lando Norris's first win, but there was so much going on top of that as well. So let's just dive right into it, starting with some of the news that we've had come out. Let's start off with the fact that Nico Hülkenberg will be joining Sauber for the 2025 season and then sticking with them as Sauber becomes Audi. Now, I can't lie, the news came as a slight bit of a surprise to me, and I did think he was going to be joining Audi. We had heard so many rumours about it, so that wasn't a surprise, but I didn't think he'd be joining Audi until 2026 when they complete that full takeover from Sauber. Now, I do think this is going to mix things up in silly season just a little bit, and that's because both Haas drivers are out of their contract this year. And I was of the opinion that Ollie Behrman was going to be joining Haas. He's had such a phenomenal drive out in Saudi Arabia and is an amazing talent. But I thought basically they'd bring Ollie Behrman in and take Kevin Magnussen out and then keep Nico Hülkenberg. So the driver lineup for 2025 would be Behrman and Hülkenberg. The thing is, Magnussen still might be leaving Haas at the end of this year. Haas might decide on an entirely new lineup. Maybe Kevin Magnussen wants to leave, but I do think Ollie Behrman will be on the grid in 2025. Now, it does then change what I think is going to be happening at Sauber, because that means that one seat in Sauber is already gone, and we have Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu both out of a contract. Now, we did hear over the weekend that there's the potential that Valtteri Bottas is in conversation with Williams and with Haas. So he could willingly just want to move from Sauber because he might know that maybe Audi don't want to keep him and he's looking for a longer term contract. I always thought Bottas could go back to Williams, right? He has been there before. It was his old team before he went to Mercedes and he had a great time there. The Haas seat came as a little bit more of a surprise to me, but I could also see that happening. He might want to move there. Haas is actually doing pretty well this season, especially when you look at the results Nico Hülkenberg has managed to get for them. With Zhou Guanyu, though, if he was to lose his seat, I'm really not sure where else he would go. Potentially Haas, but I think for him it might be a little bit more of a struggle to find a seat on the grid if Sauber don't re-sign him for the next year. We also have the fact that Théo Pourchaire was still after a seat in F1, part of the Sauber Academy. He is driving an IndyCar now, so maybe he might want to stay out in the States and stay with IndyCar. And then we also have Zane Maloney, who's part of the Sauber Academy right now in F2 and is doing a really good job, is a great driver in my opinion. So that has changed some of the predictions that I've had for silly season up a little bit, and I'm gonna have to rejig some things now, guys. That news though came out last weekend when I was away. I didn't get a chance to sit down and really talk about it, but it has helped me just gather all my thoughts on what I think is gonna happen. The biggest news I think that came out of this race weekend is the fact that Adrian Newey will be leaving Red Bull. We had so many rumours going around beforehand that he was leaving. He'd handed in his resignation. He wasn't happy with the team. I think for about 4 or 5 days running up to that announcement, maybe a little bit longer, we'd heard a lot of rumours that he was going to be leaving Red Bull, and then we finally got the confirmation just before the race weekend kicked off. I have seen comments, right, from people saying, look, he's just one person, he doesn't work on the car that much anymore, it doesn't really matter whether he's at Red Bull or not, he's not the one helping them win championships anymore, which I think is just insane to me, right? He is such a sought after and talented engineer. It doesn't matter what people say. I don't care if people think that, oh, he's not doing much anymore. Even though he might not be on the day-to-day running of that car, he might not be really hands-on like he was before, right? He still has an impact on the direction that car is going in. And the thing is, I think with Adrian Newey and with these set of regulations and whatever regulations we get, he's been an engineer in F1 since 1988. You can't buy that experience. You can't learn that experience. He understands so many different iterations of regulations. So regardless of whether or not he is doing all the hands-on day-to-day running of the team and of the engineering group, that doesn't matter, because he can help direct them if he thinks, you know what, I've seen this happen before and it didn't work, so maybe we should just push that idea aside, right? So I do think it's crazy when people are like, it doesn't matter that Red Bull are losing him. I think Red Bull are really going to feel the effect of him going from the team, and yeah, I think it will have a big impact on the team. Right now he is saying he just wants to take some time out for himself, for his family and for his wife, just enjoying time away from Formula One, which I think is completely understandable, especially given how long the calendars have become recently. His gardening leave, though, right now is basically working on the RB17, which is the hypercar project that Red Bull have going on right now. So he's not going to be working with the Formula One team, but with the hypercar, and he'll be working on that until it's done, and that is his gardening leave, essentially. He should be available to an F1 team if he so chooses to carry on in Formula One during 2025. So his gardening leave isn't incredibly long. He will be able to join a team next year if he wants to. We will wait and see what happens. However, I do think, I am of the opinion that he will be back in Formula One. I don't think Adrian Newey is done in Formula One just yet. We have heard multiple rumours from multiple teams about where he could be going. Rumours of Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari. And I know James Vowles just said he would be remiss not to talk to Adrian Newey. I am just tabling the Williams and Newey partnership going on again, though. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, yes, every team is going to be in talks with him, but that seems very unlikely. On top of the fact, I'm not sure if Williams would be able to afford Adrian Newey, I've got to be honest with you, right? But looking at Mercedes, Aston Martin, McLaren and Ferrari. McLaren, I think just in general, and I think this with Williams as well, I don't think Adrian Newey is going to go back to any of his old teams. So I'm just pushing those aside for now. I don't think he's going to return to any of his old teams. Aston Martin, I don't necessarily think is too likely, and nor is Mercedes. I think with Mercedes, there is a lot of work to be done with that car. I think that is evident from the past 3 seasons now. There is a lot of work, and I don't know how much time also Adrian Newey wants to still spend in Formula One. I don't think he's done yet, but I don't think it'll be very long until he opts to take that full step back. We'll come to races and enjoy them maybe, but not working with a team. I think Mercedes has got a bit of a challenge up ahead of them for the next couple of years, so I can't necessarily see him wanting to go there. Aston Martin, I mean, I don't think they're doing as badly as Mercedes, but I don't know whether it's a team he necessarily wants to join. Dan Vellows had joined as their head engineer and he had worked under Adrian Newey. So I just think there's a team structure there that maybe he doesn't want to mess up, because I think Dan also left Red Bull to be given that role as lead engineer to really carve out his own name and his own team in Aston Martin. So it might maybe upset some people in Aston if Adrian Newey was to join. Ferrari, however, okay, I don't care if people think I'm being delusional. I think this is the most likely team that Adrian Newey will join if he opts to stay in Formula One. He has said himself that Ferrari was a team that was on his list of teams to work with. It would have been a dream. And also Lewis Hamilton was a driver that he would have loved to have worked with in his career. You could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Join in 2025. You're working with a 7-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, and the pinnacle of Formula One teams, Ferrari, the most historic Formula One team. I do think there's a chance because, like I said, he wasn't doing a lot of day-to-day stuff with Red Bull. I don't think Ferrari would expect him to do day-to-day stuff, maybe work in sort of a consultancy sort of role, consulting with the engineering team. So I honestly think that is the most likely, and I have heard the rumours that he is in talks. I've heard rumours that he is basically 90% of the way there with Ferrari, that they're just waiting for a signature on the contract right now. Adrian Newey has not ruled out working with Ferrari. And then, yeah, I I'm just definitely of the opinion that 2025, we might be seeing Adrian Newey dressed in red. So the Adrian Newey news, not surprising that he was leaving Red Bull, because when the news got announced, we'd heard so many rumours beforehand. The rumours were surprising, the news wasn't. What had surprised me was the news that came out this weekend about the fact that Gunther Steiner will be suing the Haas F1 team. So yeah, Adrian Newey leaving Red Bull, not a surprise. The rumours when they came out were a surprise. The news was not, because we'd had so many rumours. What had surprised me this weekend, though, was the fact that Gunther Steiner is going to be suing Haas. That was not on my bingo card for this year, guys. So yeah, definitely not expecting that one. We had redacted court filings that were released, though, and that was the news that broke this weekend. So basically what these court filings that his lawyers, Gunther Steiner's lawyers, had put in were saying that Steiner's notoriety and personality had helped Haas go from an upstart team to a formidable brand in the F1 circuit. That's what the filings had said, right? And I think that's fair to say. Gunther Steiner is a very big personality in Formula One. He is one of the most known faces, I think, because of Drive to Survive. All the sound bites we've gotten off him. He's a very big personality. Even if you don't support Haas, you know of Gunther Steiner and you probably love him. So I think that was a fair statement from Haas to make, because I don't think if Gunther Steiner had not been in Haas that we would have had as much sort of conversation and talk about Haas, and GTS wouldn't have followed Haas as much. Now, these court filings then went on to say that Haas has not paid Gunther Steiner the commission, and that's been held by the team since 2021. So he's owed commission from 2021 to 2023. There is money that he is owed from them. On top of that, it also says that the team is using his image, Gunther Steiner's image, to sell merchandise after they had parted ways, and that Gunther Steiner was not getting any royalties. This news broke, and Haas has not made any comment on it, but yes, there is a court filing that has gone in, and Gunther Steiner wants to sue because yes, they're using his likeness on merchandise after he left the team and he's not getting royalties, and also because yes, he's got unpaid commission between 2021 and 2023. I have no clue how this is going to go, guys. I'm not a legal head. I don't know what goes on in the world of law and, you know, how sturdy this case is. And also they were redacted court filings. We don't know all of the ins and outs. But I'm going to be very interested to see if this goes anywhere. And if it does, where does it go? Will he win the case? I think what we did know, though, is that Gunther Steiner was not happy when he left Haas. But I don't think anyone had been expecting him to sue them. I can't lie, though. This is once again brought into question for me. How long does Haas have on the F1 grid? They are looking more competitive this season than they have done in the past couple of seasons, especially compared to 2023. But I'm just genuinely curious, especially with Gene Haas, how long do you want to keep funding this Formula One team? How long do you want to have them on the grid for? But yes, that was the Gunther Steiner news, but that's not where all of the sort of legal news stopped, right? And okay, this isn't so much legal, maybe it has more towards political with a little bit of law, but we had US Congress write to Formula One about Andretti's bid rejection. Once again, a piece of news I was not expecting to hear about. So essentially, US Congress wrote to Formula One about their rejection of Andretti's application to be on the grid in 2026. Now, we know that Andretti were unhappy about that rejection, understandably so, but it seems like they now have a letter signed by 12 congressmen in the United States to Formula One. The letter basically said that they had concerns about antitrust competitive actions that could prevent American companies, which are Andretti and General Motors, from producing and competing in Formula One. Now, I've got to be honest, I don't know much about antitrust laws and competitive actions and all the rest of it in America, so I don't really know how much weight this holds, okay? But the letter said they wanted to know the rationale behind that rejection and under what authority they had rejected it, because the FIA had accepted the application and it had moved on to Formula One, to Liberty Media and the teams to vote on whether or not they were allowed entry. Now, bear in mind, it wasn't a flat-out, outright rejection from Formula One. Yes, it's gutting that they couldn't join in 2026, but what F1 said is that they could enter in 2028 if General Motors were building their own engine instead of just being a technical partner to Andretti. Because at the moment, what Andretti is saying is that apparently they would be using a Renault engine. But 2028 isn't good enough for Andretti. They want on the grid in 2026. They don't want to wait an extra 2 years for that. They have built offices out in Silverstone. They said that they're looking at entering F2 and F3, and they are on an insanely massive recruitment drive. If you look at their LinkedIn right now in their job section, they are looking to hire what is essentially an F1 team ready just to go. They really want to show F1, the teams, the FIA, and the world that they are serious about their Formula One entry. Like I said, I don't know American laws. I don't know American politics that well, right? I know some things, but I don't really know how much weight 12 congressmen writing a letter can actually have. I don't know what effect it would actually have and whether it would have any, to be honest with you. Regardless of what that letter does, so what I think it has shown is just how passionate and determined Andretti are to get on the grid in 2026. And I have to be honest with you, Andretti are a team I do want to see on the grid. I don't think this is a money grab for Andretti. This isn't just advertising. The way that they're going about this, the fact that they're like, look, we'll look at getting into F2, we will build the offices out in Silverstone ready, we'll start the recruitment drive. They really want in on Formula One. This is a company that just love racing. They love what they do. I'm all for Andretti joining the grid. I think it'll be an asset to Formula One. I'd be excited to see them race. I love watching them race in IndyCar. And look, they might not be competitive straight off the bat. I don't think they'll be a backfield team though. I think they'll at least start in the midfield, and I think they will work their way up to being one of the front runners. So we will wait and see what happens there. Like I said, I think it would be great. We don't have enough seats in Formula One, let's be honest. We have so much talent coming up from Formula 2, so many drivers that want in on Formula One, right? And there are only 20 seats. Having an extra 2, I think, would be amazing and give more young drivers a chance to get on the grid. Right, I have 2 more pieces of news left before we get into the race weekend and the action that happened on track. I told you guys there was a lot of news and there was a lot going on this weekend. So we have the fact that the FIA have received a request for Kimi Antonelli to be given his super license early. Now it looks like this request came from Williams, not from Mercedes, so that Williams can swap him in for Logan Sargent. Now I have to believe this was somewhat under the influence of Toto Wolff, because I don't think this is necessarily something James Vowles would have just wanted for the sake of it and would have just thought of. I do have to think that, yes, Toto Wolff has played a part in this. If that is the case, I'm slightly disappointed. I was hoping that James would take more control over the team without the influence from Mercedes about the drivers that they have in the car, because Williams have their own junior academy. But yes, I do have to believe that this was somewhat under the influence of Toto Wolff. Look, it is understandable if they want to swap Logan out, right? And if they want to use from the Mercedes pool, that is also understandable because a lot of their junior drivers don't have that much experience. They're still in Formula 2 and below, right? But I think that's the key thing for me. Why would you swap Logan out for a rookie that's not finished in Formula 2? If you're still going to use a Mercedes driver, Mick Schumacher is there, having done 2 seasons of Formula 1 and having a bit more experience than Kimi Antonelli at the moment. But do I think Kimi Antonelli will get his super license early? It is hard to say. Now, he is 18 in August, which is only 3 months away. We're in May at the moment, so it wouldn't be incredibly early that he'd be granted his super license, right? But there are multiple parties and commissions that have to agree to this through a voting process because of the regulations. But bear in mind, right, even though, yes, his birthday is only 3 months away, he has only really completed FRECA more recently in his career. He didn't do F3, he jumped and then went into F2, and he's only done a handful of races in F2 this season because, you know, that's the way F2 works. He's obviously just at the beginning of the F2 season. But yes, apparently this is coming off the back of what was an impressive drive in a Mercedes car when he was doing the test drive there. But if this does happen, what I think will end up happening is that he'll finish this season with Williams, finish out the 2024 season, and then we'll go to Mercedes in 2025. I just have mixed opinions on this, especially with Toto, because there was a time when Toto had said that he wanted to give Antonelli 2 seasons in Formula 2. He didn't want to rush him because he'd already skipped Formula 3 and he didn't want to put too much pressure on him. We are now at a point though where, I definitely believe that this decision to get his super license early, if the request came from Williams, because we're not sure yet, guys, where this request came from, but it is understood that it didn't come from Mercedes. If it came from Williams, I do have to believe that Toto had some kind of influence on it. I don't think he made the decision for Williams, but I think he had some kind of influence there. And I think it's just because Toto is a little bit worried about where Lewis's seat goes over the next couple of years. He wasn't expecting Lewis to leave early, and now he is in a panic about what to do. That, in my opinion, should not have to then be at the detriment of Kimi Antonelli's development. They opted to give Lewis a 1 + 1 year contract. They hadn't expected Lewis to cut that contract short, but in which case you should have given him an ironclad 2-year contract instead of a 1 + 1 year, which means that +1 year has an exit clause. Lewis exercised that and left, and Toto has now been left without a contingency plan. It caught him off guard, and look, I think you should always plan for all eventual possibilities and all eventual plans that could potentially happen, right? Toto Wolff has evidently not planned ahead and is now panicking because yes, the Mercedes seat is a good seat, it's not a bad seat, it's not a back marker, but it's not as sought after as what the seat was when they were at the peak of their domination. And also, Toto has to look at what driver he wants in there to help bring them back to the front. He might not want Antonelli in there straight away, but I don't know how many drivers would be happy with just a 1-year contract at this point. Most drivers are looking for a long-term contract. So it's put him in between a rock and a hard place, to be honest with you. So that's the news there with Antonelli. We will find out what happens, but like I said, it does have to go to a vote because of the regulations. And then finally, F1 Academy was obviously back this weekend out in Miami. It was phenomenal. The racing was brilliant. I absolutely love watching these women race. But we got some news out of F1 Academy as well, and that is the fact that Hello Sunshine is going to be producing a docuseries to be released in 2025 on Netflix about F1 Academy. Hello Sunshine being Reese Witherspoon's production company. It's going to show behind the scenes on race weekends, give us personal stories about the women, about their families, and their journey into F1 Academy and into racing. I cannot wait for this. I think it's going to be great for the series. It's going to be great to encourage young girls into motorsport, encourage women of all ages into motorsport, whether it's in driving, engineering, content creation, presenting, media, legal stuff in motorsport. I think it's going to do a lot of good. But yeah, I am super excited for it. Keep an eye out for it in 2025 on Netflix. But let's get into this race weekend though, guys. There was a lot going on. We will talk about Lando Norris's win because absolutely phenomenal race from him. But let's start off from the beginning. Charles Leclerc only ended up getting 1 lap in during the only free practice session. He had to spin and then just wasn't able to carry on, red flagging that session, making it shorter for all the other drivers. Not great when Piero Ferrari is in the garage, but hey ho, it's fine. The car wasn't broken at least, right? And it didn't seem to matter anyway because he goes into sprint quali then later on, the sprint shootout, and lands in P2. So apparently that 1 lap was all he needed during FP1. This weekend, though, I've got to be honest, was an absolute hive for penalties. Wow, did we get a lot of them going on. And it all kicked off with Esteban Ocon, which I don't think should surprise anyone. Ocon ended up getting a 10-second time penalty before the sprint race even started because of a pit lane incident between him and Charles Leclerc. It was an unsafe release. His engineers were telling him not to go out after they'd given him the go-ahead. He wasn't looking, went out and then went into Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. So that was the very first penalty that kicked off this race weekend, and then they just came in thick and fast. So we had in the sprint race what was an intense lap 1 incident. 3 cars all going into each other, sandwiched, and then Lando Norris pushed off track and had to DNF from the race. Do I think Lewis was at fault here? No. Do I think that Lance Stroll or Fernando Alonso was at fault here? No, because those are the 3 cars that were involved in the incident. I genuinely think it was just a lap 1 incident. Lewis would have been fine going into that corner, had that incident between Lance and Alonso not happened, and the Lance and Alonso incident was really just a first lap incident. Those things happen. Do I think there are still some inconsistencies with the way we're handing up penalties? Yes, but most of the incidents on a first lap, but the FIA do just tend to say it's a first lap incident and we're not giving any penalties for it. I don't think, like the FIA said, that anyone was really primarily at fault here. Honestly, I don't think we can blame Lance. I don't think we can blame Alonso, and I don't think we can blame Lewis. Nobody was fully at fault. They all played a part, yes. Lance and Lewis played more of a part, I do think, but I don't think anyone was primarily at fault for what went on there. But it was gutting for Lando Norris to have missed out when, yes, the McLaren came with, I think, 10 upgrades to their car. Lando had the full set of upgrades, Oscar had half of them. But gutting that he couldn't really put that into play during the sprint. The sprint race was fairly interesting when you look at Kevin Magnussen's race, because this is where we had so many penalties come into play. So here we go. We had a 10-second time penalty for Kevin Magnussen for going off track and gaining an advantage against Lewis Hamilton. He then got a black and white flag for track limit violations. He then got a 10-second time penalty for pushing Lewis off track. After the race, he got summoned to the steward's office for unsportsmanlike behaviour. He then got another 10-second time penalty. I can't really remember for. It was either the unsportsmanlike behaviour or another sort of track limits, pushing Lewis off the racetrack. Does it really matter? The guy racked up like 30 seconds worth of penalties, sorry. And then on top of all of the penalties that he also got penalty points, 3 of them, onto his licence for everything that happened there. And that took his total up to 8 penalty points on his super licence. Penalties didn't stop there though. Lewis Hamilton ended up getting a 20-second drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So I think that was about a minute's worth of penalties in a sprint race, guys. In a sprint, we had a minute's worth of penalties, which also is quite impressive, I have to be honest with you. Lando Norris then also got a fine. He crossed the track on foot, which is a safety issue, and the FIA don't allow that to happen, so you got a monetary penalty for that. There's a 50k euro penalty. He only has to pay 25k of that, and if it happens again, he has to pay the other 25k, so it's a suspended fine. Max Verstappen did win that sprint though, with everything else going on behind him. He had no problem winning. Charles Leclerc was in P2, and then Carlos Sainz in P3. So once again, Charles Leclerc showing that he really did not need FP1 apparently. Going into qualifying though, some of the main highlights for me were the fact that in Q1, Pierre Gasly got into P5. Amazing. Alpine did come in with a lightweight chassis for both of their cars. The cars are now at the minimum weight limit, and one of the big issues for their car was the fact that it was overweight, severely overweight compared to the other cars, which was slowing them down. So the fact they've managed to bring all of that weight back down to the minimum weight limit is amazing for Alpine, and yeah, it looks like it helped them out massively. P5 and Q1. I'm not sure the Alpines know what they're doing up there. Now, Daniel Ricciardo didn't mention this in the sprint, but he qualified in P4 for the sprint race and then finished in P4 in the sprint. So he had a phenomenal time during those sprint sessions, right? Qualifying wasn't as great for him though. He went into 18th during qualifying. Apparently it was something to do with the tyres that he was saying, but he ended up having to start from P20 because he was going to have to serve a grid place penalty because of the incident with Nico Hülkenberg during a safety car. So he had a 3-place grid penalty because of that and would be starting in 20th in the Miami Grand Prix. The highs and lows for Daniel Ricciardo this race weekend, he felt it all. I mean, P4 was amazing for him during sprint quali and the sprint race, and then to start in 20th, I mean, yeah, that is definitely experiencing all the highs and lows of Formula 1. To no surprise, Max Verstappen got pole position. Charles Leclerc was in P2, lining up next to him. Going into the race weekend though, Sergio Perez in lap 1 just overshot, went off track during turn 1 into the runoff area. An absolute miracle in my opinion that he didn't manage to collect anyone. He missed everyone managed to get avoiding action, including Carlos Sainz. He looked like he was going to end up hitting Carlos, but Carlos managed to get avoiding action there, and yeah, he managed to get back on track, no issue to the car, but just completely overshot that one. At one point in the race, we had Max Verstappen go over a bollard. I don't know what happened there. We didn't really see much of Max in the beginning part of the race when he was leading. We don't tend to, because he's so far and away from everyone. He's just in his own little world racing. But yeah, they showed the replay and Max Verstappen just collected the bollard as he was driving. To be fair, Max had said this entire weekend that he wasn't 100% happy with the car. It wasn't really behaving the way he wanted it to, and I don't know whether, there were just some steering issues or tyre issues, and just collected the bollard with him. It did take a little while though for us to get a VSC for that, and I was surprised. It was just a bollard in the middle of the track. I did think that they would end up calling a VSC earlier. They did eventually though, so that was the only VSC I think that we had during the race. Lap 29 though, we had an incident that did cause a safety car to come out, and that was because Kevin Magnussen had made contact with Logan Sargent, and Logan Sargent had to DNF from his home race. My heart sank for him. He's not had the best start to the season. He's at his home race, has heard this news about Kimi Antonelli and the request for his super license apparently coming from Williams. Rumours anyway that Williams might want to swap him out in the middle of the season. And to DNF from your home race is gutting. And he wasn't in P20 at this point either, I don't think. He wasn't in last place, so he was running all right at the time. But I was absolutely gutted for him. Kevin Magnussen did end up getting his 10-second time penalty because of that, and an extra 2 points on his super license. That takes his total up to 10 points now. It is 12 points before a driver gets a racing ban. That's the maximum you're allowed, and then your penalty points go back to 0. Kevin Magnussen is towing a very dangerous line at this point. I think that is evident. 10 points on your super license. Any kind of incident on the racetrack, if he is deemed at fault because of it, will cause him to get another 2 points potentially on his license, and then it's a race ban. Haas can use a reserve driver for that. It's not that they can't drive that car at all. They can only drive with one car. But for Kevin Magnussen, that will not be great. No driver wants a race ban, and we haven't seen a driver get a race ban because of penalty points in, I think it's 10 years, maybe over. So it's been a really long time, guys. Look, there are a couple of drivers that I think have been getting closer to that race ban total, and what I don't think helps either, right? Not just down to the drivers, but the fact that we have such long seasons now, 24 races, gives you the opportunity basically to collect more penalty points in a year, right? And when we had 18 races, 15 races, there weren't that many opportunities. We're 24, there is the opportunity to collect a lot more of them. So we have a couple of drivers, I think, that are on the 8 mark maximum. Kevin Magnussen is the closest though, and to pick up 5 points in one weekend is absolutely insane. I don't understand that, and I don't even know what to say. I have never heard of a driver picking up 5 penalty points in one weekend. This has been an absolute nightmare for Kevin Magnussen. I think there is a very, very likely chance that we will see him with a race ban at some point this season. I mean, we've got a triple header coming up. We've got a week break now, and then it's Imola, Monaco, and then Canada. That's a triple header. I'm pretty sure it's a triple header anyway. But regardless, there are just races coming in back to back now before summer break, and he is gonna need to drive a clean cut race. Quali is gonna have to be clean. Sprint shootout, the race, he needs to be careful because there is going to be a race ban coming at him very, very quickly otherwise. That was not the end of all the penalties though. Carlos Sainz got a penalty at the end of the race. It was a post-race penalty, 5 seconds, because of an incident with Oscar Piastri. They had been racing quite hard. Sainz had tried to overtake, had made contact with Oscar Piastri, and Oscar Piastri had to go into the pits for a new front wing and ended up at the back of the pack. He was running a very good race before that otherwise. Kevin Magnussen also, on top of all the other penalties that he's had this weekend, got a 20-second drive-through penalty. Apparently he went through the pit lane and didn't change his tyres. You're not allowed to do that unless it's when the safety car is going through the pit lane. If you go through it on your own, you have to change your tyres. You can't just drive through it. Lance Stroll also got a 10-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. So there was a lot going on there penalty-wise this weekend. Strategy, though, for Lando Norris played out absolutely beautifully. McLaren had yet to pit him when that last safety car came out at lap 29 because of Logan Sargent and Kevin Magnussen. They pitted him during that safety car, which was beautiful timing because he was leading the race anyway. Pit loss time gets slashed in half during a safety car. And yeah, he had a brilliant start at the safety car restart when the safety car gone back in and was absolutely flying for that last part of the race. And he had to hold that lead. It wasn't for 5 laps. It wasn't for, 6 or 7. There was a good chunk of the race left that he had to hold that lead on for. The fact that he managed to hold off Max Verstappen during that restart and keep Max behind him was incredible. And yeah, Lando Norris went on to win his very first Grand Prix. It's been 110 races, guys, that he's been in Formula 1. 110 races with McLaren. There have been close calls. Sochi 2021. We have waited and waited and waited for Lando Norris to get his first win. I think a lot of people thought it was going to happen before this point, and he has managed it. That is such a vast amount of pressure off of his shoulders now to know that he's got his first Grand Prix win under his belt. And I think it's going to change the way he drives and the way he carries himself in the paddock so much. It was so beautiful to watch. I love seeing drivers get their first win. I think it's just such an incredible moment. And for them, it's a moment in history, and for Formula 1 as well, to see another Grand Prix driver added to that roster of F1 drivers that have managed to get a win. He is now the 21st British driver to get a race win. But like I said, this is a phenomenal moment for him, for McLaren, for Lando's family. It was a really beautiful moment to watch, and during his radios afterwards, that hug with Andrea Stella as well was so cute and beautiful. You could see how much it didn't just mean to Lando, but it meant to the entire team. And I think that's what really got to me, is that this was a team that was so fully behind Lando, supported him, believe in him, and that's why they've given him contract after contract after contract. They want him to stay with the team, and he wants to stay with them. There's so much faith they put in each other, and that was something that really well and truly paid off this last weekend. I could not be any more happy for him. Like I said earlier in the podcast, the main headline of the Miami Grand Prix, absolutely no doubt in that. So chuffed for him. I think, yeah, like I said, pressure coming off his shoulders now for getting that first race win. The McLaren is just looking so strong with these upgrades. Oscar, yes, only has half of them. I think for Imola, he's getting the full package, so he's really not got long to wait now. But even then, even with half of those upgrades, he was running a very strong race before that incident with Carlos Sainz. So I think for Oscar getting those upgrades, it's going to be great to see both of those McLarens up there fighting at the front. I am going to wait and see what happens for the next couple of races with McLaren, because yes, Miami was phenomenal for them. I definitely think they're at least on par with Ferrari, maybe a little bit better than them at the moment. With Red Bull, however, I don't really know. I can't call it yet. I don't think they're at that level just yet. Red Bull did have some issues this weekend, and no, I'm not taking away from anything Lando Norris did. He had an incredibly strong race and kept his head down, stayed calm, got through it. But Red Bull in general as a team had some issues with their car. Max was not happy. I know he's complaining about steering on his stint with the hard tyres at the end of the race, which I don't think will help, but I know it's something that they will go back at and they will look into the data and figure out what happened there. But I think McLaren are moving in the right direction. I don't think they're necessarily at pace with Red Bull just yet, but the fact that McLaren now have the speed to be able to get that win, to get Lando Norris to that win, for Lando to have the confidence in the car and in himself, says something. They're on the right track completely. So we will see what happens there over the next couple of races as well, when we go to different circuits, how those upgrades might behave. And obviously these aren't going to be the only set of upgrades that McLaren bring. There will be more throughout the season, so hopefully there will be more pace to be unlocked. Now, normally I do go through all the other teams during the race. I'm not going to, because this feels like quite a long episode anyway. But there are a couple of other things I want to point out during this race, because whilst Lando Norris had a phenomenal race, we also had Alpine scoring its first ever point of the season, and I'm so happy for them. Look, it has been a rough start to the season for Alpine. They were in P10 in the Constructors up until China, when they went into P9. They were pointless up until Miami. They had not scored a single point. They were struggling. The drivers weren't happy. They were having to hustle that car as much as they could. They weren't getting out of Q1. They weren't scoring points. They were a backfield car, which Alpine should not be, right? Considering the resources they have available to them, considering where they were the last couple of seasons, right? They weren't a top flight team, but they were battling in the midfield. They just fell apart at the beginning of this season. So for Esteban Ocon to get into P10 and take home their first point of the season means a lot to the team, I am sure, and I'm so happy for them. Look, it couldn't have gotten worse for Alpine. I mean, they were at 0 points, but the hope is now that they don't regress, that it keeps getting better for them. I want to see more midfield battling. I want to see these teams improve. It's part of what I love about F1 is seeing that development rate, seeing the way teams change as the season goes on, and the season is so long now that yeah, the constructors can change. Things in F1 can change so quickly. Once again, Lando's first win. Did I go into this weekend thinking he was going to win his first race? Absolutely not. Am I glad that he did? Yes, and those upgrades were definitely a part of this. So that's what I mean. Everything can change so quickly, and yeah, seeing Alpine manage to get their first point was incredible. Really happy for Esteban Ocon. We also had Lewis in P6. I think this was definitely his best race of the season so far. Managed to stay on the tail of the Red Bull of Sergio Perez. It was a bit of a struggle for him in the sprint race, especially trying to get past the Haas. The race, though, he really managed to get those hard tyres to work for him at the start when everyone else was generally starting on mediums, bar a couple of people. And then, yeah, got onto the medium tyres and was flying with them, found the pace in the car. So I think this was also a really good race for Lewis. Do I think Mercedes had necessarily found race pace? No, I don't, because it wasn't amazing, right? It wasn't like they were competing right at the front. George Russell was also struggling a little bit. He was behind people like the V-Carb of Yuki Tsunoda for a while, and the overtakes weren't coming easy to either driver. Straight line speed wasn't great. So there is still improvement to be had. But for Lewis Hamilton, I think this was definitely one of the best races he's had this season. And also, yeah, Yuki Tsunoda's performance was brilliant. So sprint for V-Carb, they both managed to score points. And then in the race, it was just Yuki Tsunoda, but that is definitely helping their points tally in the Constructors' Championship. Driver of the day was, to no surprise, Lando Norris. And yeah, I don't think you can take it away from him. He just had an incredible drive, didn't let the pressure get to him. The strategy calls from McLaren were amazing. And yeah, he stayed level-headed, stayed calm, and then brought home his first race win. And also the first race win for McLaren in a couple of years, so a welcome win on both fronts for them. And when I do say race win, I mean as a Grand Prix, because yes, Oscar Piastri last year did win a sprint, but not a Grand Prix. There hasn't been much change in the Drivers' Championship because of that. Max Verstappen is still leading. He got P2, by the way. Forgot to mention that Verstappen did end up finishing in P2, Charles Leclerc in P3. Wasn't a bad race result, but I think to have 2 races now this season where Max Verstappen hasn't won is actually pretty good going, considering the domination Red Bull have had. So that was actually quite nice to see. And also the fact that during the sprint, I think Max only won by about 2 seconds. So that's also pretty good going. Maybe the gap is slowly starting to close with the Red Bull. I'm not going to hold my breath on that. We will wait and see how Imola goes. We know what Red Bull are like. They are going to go through all of that data, everything that happened over this weekend, and figure out what happened with both of their cars and why a win wasn't on the cards for them. They will be looking at the cars, they will be looking at strategy, anything they could have done differently, and I'm sure they'll be back with a vengeance in Imola. But that is the end of this week's episode. So much news that went on, and you know what? Miami was pleasantly surprising. It's not normally a track that I really enjoy us going to, but what an amazing race. I really enjoyed it. I thought there was great overtakes there. There was some that really had me at the edge of my seat and made me feel quite nervous. The fact that, yeah, Lando Norris won his first race. We saw Daniel Ricciardo doing really well during the sprints, Alpine. There was a lot going on, and yeah, I actually really enjoyed the Miami Grand Prix weekend. Thank you guys so much for listening, and diolch yn fawr. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to, or if you watch it on YouTube, and I will see you guys the next time you're summoned to the Steward's office.